Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to the Ryan Magic Show. Today's episode is going to be focused on quite a intangible topic, and that is one of being in the void. Now, before me defining what that even is, if you're here, I want you to trust that you chose to listen to this topic for a reason, and that there's going to be something here for you. Now, before we get into the episode, I'm inviting you to connect with me. I would love to connect more intimately through Instagram at the Ryan Magic. If you haven't yet reached out to say hey and told me a little bit more about yourself, or that you're listening to this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. And if Instagram's not your jam, then you can email me, ryan@ryanmagic.com. And I really want to get this podcast out to as many people as possible so I can continue to be serving and contributing with the way that I really love to do that. And this is one of those ways. So the way that you can support me is by leaving a review on the channel, and that's always really appreciated and meaningful. So please do that. Let's get into this topic of the void. It's down to interpretation what it means. I've heard it referenced more on the spiritual path in two different ways. Because if you look up the term void, or the word void, the adjective, if it's used to describe something, then it's usually used to describe nothingness. The noun of void is also nothingness. And the other way that it's referenced is as like a gap or a bridge. And that's both of those feel really relevant in terms of the way that I'm going to help give some density and some substance to what this topic is, and some support around how to navigate it. So if you're on this podcast, it tells me that you are on a path of growth that involves a desire to feel more whole in life. There are two distinct categories of growth, the way that I see it. One can be attempting to grow from a place of lack, and they're attempting to create pseudo wholeness, conditional confidence, by accumulating externals that they're very much attached to, because said person believes that they're not good enough unless they have that thing. And so there's a big attachment to that. And someone can really be motivated and put a lot of hard work in and devotion, which I totally respect that aspect of this category of growth. Working hard with blood, sweat, and tears, finding solutions, problem solving, to be able to create external growth. And sometimes to create external growth, someone can do internal growth. And I would still put that in the category of external growth. So if someone's like, I'm going to work on my mindset in order to do better in my business, I'm going to work on my belief systems in order to call in a partner that I really want, I would still say they're in the category of external growth. The second element of growth is internal growth. And that's just the way I'm defining it in this moment. It can be defined lots of different ways. But that other category, that more internal category of growth, from the way that I see it, is more of a spiritual awakening. And before we get all up in arms about the stigma of that, what that means to me is a recognition that there is more than meets the eye in this lifetime. An extra layer of awareness being established that life is about more than these externals, and that deep down within every consciousness is the recognition of the truth of what we are, which is wholeness. And this is this concept of oneness. Now, pre-framing that there are these two different paths, the way that I mainly see the void enter someone's reality, and I'll finish this loop. The way that I mainly see the void enter someone's reality is off the back end of a wrestle between these two different flavors of growth in life. So if someone has established a pretty fixed idea of what life is, fixed is not bad. If something is fixed, it creates stability. We want the layer of our house to be fixed. We want the walls of our house to be fixed. If they weren't fixed, then we would have no stability because there'd be walls flying everywhere and we wouldn't have any shelter from the rain. We want our skin to be fixed. We don't want it to be our organs to be flying off everywhere, or we would have no structure and stability. And so the way that we view life is important to create stability, having some fixed ideas and understandings. And if someone's in a transition zone from prioritizing a certain motivation in life, a certain way to approach life, and that starts to get destabilized because they're opening up to a suspicion and a sense that there is more than meets the eye in this life, and the way that they'd been doing things, maybe that's not including the whole picture of what our universe and reality is about. So the way that I see people enter the void is when there's either consciously or unconsciously, explicit or implicitly, having some sense of that. That could be given the synonym of a spiritual awakening. And so the void is a dark area of nothingness, and it is a transition zone. And it is very, very confusing and overwhelming for the part of us that wants to be clear and in control. Now, when it comes to Vedic wisdom, which is the set of philosophy that I've done the most study on and learned the most about, they've got a model that I've shared in previous podcasts, or one previous podcast to be specific, called the 7 stages of consciousness. And there is a stage of consciousness called cosmic consciousness. Now, these stages of consciousness are essentially a full spectrum of different layers of awareness in the way that we see and associate with life. Now, my belief is that we all are oneness in manifest human form. Joe Dispenza thinks the same thing, that we are the quantum realm, but we are only manifest in the world. Our creative potential actualizes from that place of the quantum. And that is technically also the void. And so in these stages of consciousness, there are varying degrees of connection to that quantum, that nothingness, that everythingness, that oneness, also known as isness, the totality, what is, amness, God, the divine. There are a lot of different ways to reference it. And some religions will paint it specific things. Like in the Vedic and Hindu culture, they call this Shiva as well. Some people call it Surya, which means sun. The Egyptians called it sun god Ra. He was the source of everything and pure awareness. And as we navigate through life, the perspective from the Vedic tradition is that we become more connected to and aware of the fact that we are the quantum. And so on one end of the spectrum, it could be accurate to say that there is a bit more ignorance that exists in that stage of consciousness. And then as we transition and wake up, we become more connected to oneness. And so as also known as the first stage of enlightenment is a state of consciousness called cosmic consciousness. So we have sleeping, dreaming, and waking. Sleeping, waking, dreaming. These three initial stages of consciousness are essentially before awakening. And then transcendence is a state of consciousness, which is a touching of the truth of what we are, touching of our state of oneness. Now, when someone develops transcendence meditation practice, which is a practice that takes them beyond thought, beyond conscious awareness into oneness, that is also called transcendence. And if someone does a transcendence meditation and they continue to touch this point, it really is a whole different state of consciousness, which is why a lot of the time Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation are the two main pillars of transcendence techniques. People say that these forms of meditation can be up to 4 times more restful and potent than sleep. And the reason why is because even when we're sleeping, we're still in ignorance. We're still not fully bathing in oneness. We're merely turning the off switch on some of our conscious capabilities as a human, but we're not necessarily placing our awareness on the divine. Now, when we do a transcendence meditation, we are doing that. We are connecting to pure oneness in certain moments in that experience. Now, when someone starts to have that realization and that experience, it can definitely open up the process of awakening, because it's a discovery, a very important discovery on our spiritual evolution of, wow, this life is about more than just what I got told by my teachers at school. Life is more than just about getting a job that's aligned, having a family. Life is more than what I reactively attempt to create to fit in with the world. There's something deeper here. And this truth is one of the most profound discoveries that any soul, any human will make on their journey. Now, when someone makes that and they're connecting to transcendence consciousness as the 4th stage of consciousness, after a while of bathing in that place of transcendence by being consistent, and some people can reach this state of consciousness in other ways. It's not just through potent meditation. It can be reached through plant medicine experiences. It can be reached by devotional chanting. It's just a lot easier in meditation because it's a quick access point, and it's kind of like the most bang for your buck in a way that stays integrated into your life. Plant medicine would technically have the opportunity to potentially transport you there, but with plant medicine, a lot of the time it swirls DMT around in your system to the point that you're stuck in a bridge realm between manifest world and oneness, because you can't be in oneness or completely connected to oneness and also have cognition. Because if you have the ability to think in a moment, it means you're not fully bathing in that space, because it's one, not separate. If you have a thought, there's you and the thought, and that thought needs other things to contextualize it. If you say sad only exists because we understand the difference between sad and happy. White only exists because of white and black. Red only exists because of the obscuring of the other flavors. So in other words, doing some kind of transcendence meditation is the most potent form of spiritual evolution. And if someone was to do that consistently for a period of time, hear me out here, or even not, if you've had some other kind of strategy that's had you see life differently, you might hit a stage of cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is when someone starts to feel the beauty and the reprieve that comes from feeling whole. it's not just this. There's a full spectrum of different aspects and flavors and elements of all these different states of consciousness, but I'm just picking and choosing what's most relevant in this podcast around the void. So in cosmic consciousness, anywhere between transcendence as a state of consciousness and more of an established connection to being in cosmic consciousness, it can have a symptom of a bit of confusion for the other aspect of our consciousness. So remember at the start of this video / podcast, I said, well, we can either be approaching life, attempting to grow externally, or we can be approaching life, attempting to grow internally. Now that growth internally is merely a remembering. If you're trying to grow internally, it's not necessarily about building more things, although that can just be an aligned part of someone's path. It's actually more about becoming aware of all the parts of us that we have forgotten our oneness. It's seeing life through a state of oneness, which is full love. And so it's like getting married and accepting someone for all their ups, all the downs, all the good parts, all the bad parts, all the strengths, all the weaknesses, and going, cool, that's real love. It's whole. It's not just I love one part of you, but I really despise the other part. It's a whole picture. And when someone's on an internal journey of growth, they're attempting to feel more whole. And that lens through which someone views life, when they get into cosmic consciousness, there is a shift of intention from accumulating externally to connecting internally. Accumulating externally, seeking externally, to connecting internally. And the problem or the challenge that arises with that is that it's a huge destabilization of the entire thing that's given us a fixed point to feel safe with. Stability is gone. And I'll give you an example of how I experienced this void. I was in a very, very big void for a very long time because I was so committed to growing externally and my inner territory of my inner consciousness. Remember I said we can be growing internally or externally. If someone's connected to their survival brain, which also includes our identity and our personality, it also includes the part of us that is afraid, survival brain. I call it the head. And the head attempts to live life to stay safe. That's its primary motive. It's looking for control. It's looking for stability. And then we have our heart that already is whole, and it's merely quietly with a sweet aroma of the divine inviting us to see what's already there, which is the duality and loving all of it and seeing the divine in everything. And so that process of waking up is incredibly different to the process of forgetting. I kind of divide our soul journey into 2 seasons, which it's not that linear, but it just helps me. First one is forgetting, and the second one is remembering. Forgetting is about getting. It's about getting things. It's for getting. It's about getting things so that we feel more whole externally. It's attempting to become more and accumulate more. But in the same vein, it creates separation because it presupposes that we're separate and we're attempting to make ourselves better so that we don't feel worse. And so it's not actually about togetherness. It's about succeeding. We want to be number one. We want to be the best stuff we can. And in that stage, we're under the illusion that life is separate. When we transition to the other stage, we are no longer forgetting, but we start to have our primary theme in life be about remembering. We don't have to get wholeness. We already are wholeness, and we just have to remember that. And so when we become about forgetting, when we're forgetting, it's about accumulating externals. When we're remembering, it's about taking the members, the parts of us that we've lost touch with, that we've judged, that we are seeking external to avoid. And we are remembering. We're bringing those members back into us, and we're integrating parts of ourselves we've rejected or judged or abandoned. And we're becoming more whole as a state. We already are more whole, but when we're in this remembering stage, it's about integrating and touching on that truth as a more stabilized state of consciousness. And so if someone's in the void, it means that they are transitioning from one way to approach life to another. And it's not as linear as that, because one can go in and out of the void at different layers of connecting to wholeness. There can be multiple voids, but just to share my first void with you guys, my first transition to living life, more identifying with wholeness. I was really forgetting. I was really about getting. And the getting for me was recognition. It was success. It was business achievements. It was health achievements. It was relational achievements. It was investment achievements. And it eventually, at the last little stretch before I woke up for the first time, was about spiritual achievements. That's why I started meditating. Okay, cool. It's time to master spirituality now. It was my lens at the time. And so when I was in that stage of my life, I was driven so intensely from a place of separation and lack, based on my karma and my upbringing and my trauma and all those things, to try to prove, if I get all these externals, I'm going to be lovable. I'm going to become more and more whole by getting these externals and bringing them into my life. I had the supercar, had the 4-story house, had the good-looking partner, all these things. And I'm thinking, wow, the more I get of this, the more chance I have of being worthy of love. Not consciously, but unconsciously. And so I started meditating to also master spirituality, get that as an achievement in that forgetting season. And like a lot of people that start meditating for stress release or to try to get more energy, to get more out of their getting, it folded in on itself. And by investing enough time in nothingness, in spaciousness, it gave me a vantage point to see what was super obvious to everyone else, and super obvious, not everyone else, but to a lot of other people, and super logically obvious, that I was driving from a place of deep, deep, deep insecurity, thinking that I'm not enough and I need to grow my business to be enough. And that was what my getting was about. And over a period of, I'm just going to, for convenience reasons, say roughly a year, I stabilized that realization that all these things that I was desperate to be recognized for, with my business that had all this staff, for my 100,000 plus person following, for the charity efforts that I'd given over $100,000 to charity, for my viral videos that got lots of views, and all the things that I was looking for recognition in. Over about a year, through the practice of meditation, I was able to remember that, and then to put it in just layman's terms, I could actually see what I was doing was coming from fear. Whereas before that, I was just being reactive to those fears. But through meditation, I was able to become aware. Holy crap, I'm trying to prove myself to everyone, stemming from my dad and my family. And then I'm trying to prove myself to my future partner, to the world, to my current partner, all because I'm living under the illusion that I'm unworthy and that I'm not good enough. And that was a big realization. So as I estimated, about a year of stabilizing that realization built me up to a point of readiness to go, I can't just keep doing this, knowing that what I built was built from fear and what exists is a product of that. And I'm living a non-aligned, now irrelevant reality that's built on insecurity. If I really want to learn to feel whole, I need to be okay with letting go of my identity of being some young hotshot entrepreneur that succeeds at everything. I need to let that go. And so I did. I shut down my business. Karma and the world made that easier for me because all these financial problems ensued anyway. And I liquidated my company and went, I'm going to learn to love myself without all this. And that was the start of a void. Because not only did I now not have my fixed stability, which was I wake up and I work my ass off and I stay busy and I constantly push myself, constantly lean in. Without that, there was a lot of fragility underneath because those patterns were hiding something very painful underneath, a lot of emotional baggage that sat, or emotional pain that sat between that old reality of consciousness state fear and the new reality that I desired, which was to feel more inherently whole, just for existing. That was my intention, to learn to love myself without being the entrepreneur, without flashing all my achievements in front of people all the time. And it has been roughly 6 years since that point. And it has been, I would say the entire time has been a macro theme of being in a void with little resurgent moments where I've desperately and obsessively rebounded into forgetting to try to make up for lost time that my fear told me existed. Oh my gosh, I've wasted this time quickly. Now I've done this spiritual thing. Go for it. Go big. And that same set of patterns came back in. And so it has been very, very challenging for me to stay the course of what my intuition knows is my most aligned path. What my heart knows is my most integral journey. And what my inner child, my heart, and all my different parts deeply crave to feel whole so that I can choose what I want to do without reacting to all my fears. And so it's a unique path because 95% of the world lives without moving past or hasn't yet touched transcendence or cosmic consciousness or the two after that, God consciousness and unity consciousness. And therefore, it's very difficult for other people to understand. Now, desire, I've spoken a lot more in depth about what I'm about to say, about desires versus attachments. Essentially, what's inspiring the journey? What's the North Star? Because before awakening, the North Star is a set of goals that we think we need to be enough. And after the awakening, there isn't that same level of obsessive drive. Because if someone thinks that their survival's at stake if they don't get somewhere, they're going to be pretty desperate to get there, aka me. I worked 100 hours a week to try to get to this point that I felt that if I didn't arrive at, I was a failure. Because I thought that if I was a failure, wasn't going to be lovable, my parents weren't going to protect me, childhood anchoring, and that I was going to die. That's what it felt like in my body. If I'm not enough, I'm going to die. If someone threatened me by putting me down or giving me feedback, it wasn't just interesting information. My body went into a massive fight or flight response because my whole identity and ego and safety was being compromised. not very free, not a very free way to live. However, there was a time when the universe said, let's transition. It was just other people didn't really understand what I was going through, nor did I. And so it was filled with a lot of confusion and suffering. And I would say that's pretty indicative of living in the void. It's a dark, low, stuck, confusing, heavy, painful time. And that is almost like a spiritual initiation to need to go through this journey, because without it, there isn't a appreciation for the stabilized alternate reality that comes after. But the other really big thing that can be difficult is that not only is it overwhelming for our head, our fear consciousness that has derived stability by striving and attaching and trying to be a certain person and control everything. When that control is somewhat voluntarily given up, it causes a whole nervous system freak out. So there's a lot of confusion and overwhelm, and a lot of self-judgment, a lot of second guessing, a lot of what am I doing? What's happening with this? I'm all alone. And that kind of is half of the pain. And then the other half of the pain is that when we start to take more space and just jump off the merry-go-round of the rat race and everything that comes with society's normalized expectations, once we jump off that for a moment, then that stillness essentially provokes the suppressed emotion to come to the surface as well. So when we're busy and we're working and we're striving and we're sedating ourselves with scrolling on social media and binge eating food and just constantly scrolling on Tinder, hoping for the date, or looking at watching rom-coms just to try to intoxicate ourselves with that hope of love, because we're mega attached and we need to find someone or we're not going to be enough. I've also been there big time, trying to call in my queen, find the one that's going to solve everything, and also escape the pain of feeling lonely and feeling maybe I'm unlovable. Been right on that as well. And so when the intensity of that pursuit and that orientation of direction in life being about getting, forgetting, we're going to get, strive, busyness, scrolling, sedation, emotional eating, drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, Tinder, dates, cleaning, overworking, all these things. When they loosen their grip, then the spaciousness invites all the emotional pain to come to, not all of it, but all of it's kind of opens its eyes and goes, who's going to crawl out of this cave first and rear its emotional head? Yeah. And then our nervous system starts to experience emotional pain. So not only do we have the confusion of switching our directions in life from about getting things and external things to about becoming more whole internally, but we also have all this emotional pain coming up. Both of those things are very challenging to navigate. Very, 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 very challenging, especially at the early stage of the journey, because there's way less understanding of what's going on. There's also way less safety in feeling. There's also usually all this external karmic carnage. If someone had been staying in a relationship out of fear or in a job that they don't like, try to prove themselves to their parents, and then they realize this and they make changes, that also causes a lot of destabilizing. So the void is filled with challenge. The void is filled with challenge. Now, take a breath. It's all good. But one thing that I want to point to here is that the universe, when we are in this transition stage and then also walking the second season of a soul journey, which I call remembering. It's all about, instead of trying to get things, it's all about feeling and recognizing the wholeness within us. The universe switches its intention, or at least the way that we respond to the universe changes. A quote that is somewhat accurate is that the universe withholds what we're attached to. It withholds it. It stops giving us what we want to teach us, to force us to feel okay and love ourselves without those things we're attached to. So the universe may keep you single and you're just desperately obsessed with trying to find a partner, because the universe knows, cool, I just give them what they want. They're not going to learn to feel whole without that. Maybe it's breaking through in your business and you're desperately trying to break through in your business. Instead of the universe just giving you a successful business, the universe is attempting to help you feel more whole without that business. That's a supportive process, but it's very painful, because the pragya, as it's known in Sanskrit, which means mistake of the intellect, the false perception is that we are not enough unless we get that attachment. So if we're trying to find that partner, and the partner is not coming, our nervous system that is under the illusion that it's not enough is freaking out, going, if I'm not enough, I'm not going to be loved. If I'm not going to be loved, I'm going to be all alone. If I'm all alone, I'm going to die, because no one's going to be there to have my back. And that's what the nervous system experiences. Dysregulation, fight or flight. When we're being told, in the void, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And to a certain degree, you're going to shift a part of yourself, and the compass direction is not anymore going to be led by these externals as the primary desire. It's going to be led by this desire to become whole, and this sense of contentment, which is still going to have an aligned path, and it's still going to have dharma to perform, and still going to have purpose, and you're still going to have goals. They're just not going to be things that your survival relies on to feel safe. It's going to be something that is a opportunity for a cool new experience, but without the attachment. And so that's a really big piece to understand, that the universe, once you hit the void, the universe is going to break you down in order to break you through. It's not going to just give you what you're freaking out about the fact you don't have. It's going to keep you in this state, this phase, until you relax. It's like that part in Harry Potter where they're trying to get through that plant that's like the vine, and it grabs on, and the only way through is to surrender. And when they relax, it just pushes them through. It's the same thing with the void. The only way out is through, and the only way through is to fully accept that there is a shift in life happening. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to work again. It doesn't mean you're always going to be single for the rest of your life. It just means that what Matthew McConaughey says is true. You can have anything you want as long as you don't need it. That's what it means. Because the universe is attempting you to feel the infinite bliss of knowing that you are the universe itself. That's what the universe is supporting you through with the void. To not arrive at before the void completely ignorant, in the void painful, after the void infinite bliss forever. It's not as linear as that, but that is the rough theme shifts. But then there's still wholeness and bliss at some points of the forgetting season. There's still some beautiful magic moments during the void. There's still ignorance in the after. That's not the major theme of someone's life. when they get out of the void. There's little mini voids all the time, every day. So it's not as linear as I'm explaining it, but the macro season can definitely be this way. And someone can go through one big void and then feel more stable for the rest of their life, or they can go through, I feel like I've been in one big macro void for the last 6.5 years. And I'm very much transitioned out the other side in terms of I accept all these as truths. I don't fight them or think, why don't I have my successful business? Why don't I live in the life that I used to live, and way more? Because I was suffering that whole time, completely ignorant, unable to enjoy the process. And I know that as a steady state now. It's just a known truth. And I've accepted it and embraced it. And my life is significantly more whole and fulfilled than I've ever been before. And the other piece here that I really was one of the big things that I set the intention to share in this episode, is that this is the opportunity to build unconditional self-connection and confidence and trust. You see, when I used to walk into a room when I was mega attached to being a successful entrepreneur, and whatever the metrics were to feel good about myself were always changing and growing, so I could constantly feel like I wasn't where I needed to be and I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. So I was always feeling insecure, and it wasn't obvious to everyone else. Anyone that had a sense of wholeness inside would have been able to see it, just like I can see very, very clearly where someone's true confidence is at now. But I would walk into a room full of people and I would feel so insecure. I would just go in there, and instead of setting the intention to connect with people, I was attempting to control and manipulate my experience to get little hits of recognition. I would feed through all the responses that I gave to people's questions and all the questions asked to other people. I would just feed through ways to be able to tell people about my achievements. So I'd be like, oh, what do you do for a living? And instead of actually caring what they did, all my mind was doing was attempting to figure out whether I'm better or worse than them through the lens through which I view value, human value, which was completely conditional. And then if someone said that they were older than me and not doing as well as me, I would feel safe and I'd feel superior. And if anyone said that they were younger and they were doing better at me in business, I would feel insecure, or better than me at any area. If someone had a partner I perceived better looking than mine, I'd feel insecure. If someone had a partner I perceived not as good looking as mine, then I would feel superior. And I just viewed the whole life through this metric system of judgment. It was all based on insecurity. I wasn't looking for, how do I feel a beautiful sense of connection? I wasn't looking to enjoy the present moment. I wasn't looking to create magic moments. I wasn't looking to work on something that's a genuine passion of mine and an art. I was looking to succeed at the highest level so I could finally get to some future point, which I kind of perceived was the end of my life, knowing that I'd given every last breath to trying my hardest to be enough, and had all this big CV of achievements. And I was very, very insecure. And so the truth here is that real confidence comes from, and I've been reading this amazing book. It's kind of officially one of the best books of all time, the Mahabharata. And it's a Vedic tradition book that's almost like the Bible in India. In a way, there's a lot of sets of texts with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of verses with deep cosmic wisdom, universal truths. So potent, it's wild. But this Mahabharata book is a transliteration by Ramesh Menon, and we'll put it in the show notes where you can buy it from on Amazon. But it's a 2-volume book that's probably 1,500 pages, and it's a paraphrased, shortened version. But it's the book that contains the Bhagavad Gita, if you've heard of that. The Bhagavad Gita is the only book that Gandhi took to prison. and it is one of the most widely read books in the world. And it is so potent and very juicy. So the Mahabharata, which I've been reading, is the long book. When people read the Bhagavad Gita, which is, let's say, 6 of 200 chapters of the Mahabharata, when people read the Bhagavad Gita, they're usually reading a book that has a translation of the original Sanskrit text with then commentary on what the meaning is that's happening. What's happening in the story? What does that mean? And so, anyway, I've been reading this incredible text. Also talking about a minute ago. Yeah. So the Mahabharata is like the theme that I'm noticing. I'm 500 pages in. Is that a really big theme is dharma. And dharma, the word in Sanskrit, has got lots of different translated meanings. One is functional contact, which means being of service wherever you are. If you make contact with someone, how can you be of service there? That's dharma. It's translated usually in the way that people interpret it in yogic communities around the world is purpose. What's your dharma? What's your purpose? What's your big thing you're here for? Which is not the most accurate way to view it. And a really literal direct translation is nobility. So it's being someone of high integrity and nobility. So that is like a really big theme in the book. It's about truth. It's about nobility. And there are several examples in the book where some of the main protagonists, main characters, are put in situations where they choose their truth, their nobility, their integrity above huge, challenging short-term gratification opportunities. There's one point that I remember that someone said that they had made a commitment to be celibate for the rest of their life so that their father would, don't worry about why, there is a very valid reason why, but committed to be celibate and given their word and a full oath. And then this princess wanted to marry this person. It was very important actually for their kingdom that this person who had committed to be celibate actually does have kids for the lineage to continue and for there to be people to inherit the throne next. But because he gave his word, he was true to that. And then his mentor, his guru, literally said, I order you to marry this princess. And he said, Guru, I am willing to give my life for you, but I'm not willing to go against my dharma, which is just a high level of integrity. And contextually, in what is dharma, what is nobility, what is alignment, what is purpose, is subjective to someone in every moment. It's discernible based on the person, based on their life, based on the need of the moment. However, coming back to the theme here of being in the void, I really want to address the question, what is most aligned? How do we navigate through the void? And I'm going to give some proposed solutions. I've already mentioned that the only way out is through, and to get through, you need to surrender. But that is a intellectual idea. It's not always the truth for everyone. It's always someone getting through a spiritual awakening is always on some level going to require surrender for sure. But what I want to empower you to know is that two things. One is that you get to choose what you know is needed for you, and there is no wrong. There is no objective wrong. The universe doesn't look down. God doesn't look down and say, oh, this person's stuffed up. I had a different plan for them and they screwed it. It's all God's plan. It's all the divine orchestration, right? Even us wrestling with the flavor of what's free will, what's not. However, that's the first part of what I want to say. You get to discern what's aligned for you in every moment. And you get to have the confidence to back yourself to go, no, I feel like right now I need to take some action in my business. Right now, I feel like I need to quit my job and not need to do anything for 5 years. Well, we're not going to future project that far ahead, because anything could happen in the first week. That could change, the alignment could change, but it's up to us to discern what's needed. Okay, that's one way that I want to empower you to know that you're the leader of your life. The second thing is confidence. Let's talk about confidence for a second, because when I had most of what society says that we should have, and that is hugely celebration worthy. So for me, mega achiever, lots of financial abundance, making a crap ton of cash, big business, giving people jobs, cool culture, being of service even. My business was centered around coaching, giving all the money to charity. All of these are positive things in the eyes of the average person of society. But it was coming from fear. I was deeply insecure. I was for getting. I was all about getting, and I was all about external validation. So I was super insecure, and I would wear these masks and fake this confidence. Inside, desperately desiring and really deeply desiring to feel grounded in who I was. I just didn't understand how to access that. Now, one of the biggest benefits just of the natural, because I say this, you can't change your path, in my opinion. It's like, if you're like, well, I don't want to go away from forgetting and to remembering. It's like, well, you're part of this universe, that's the universal law, and you can resist it, but it's going to happen anyway. However, when you transition to this second stage and you're in the void and you're working through to the other side, are really in amongst the pain of the confusion and the overwhelm and everything changing, and in amongst the pain of the emotional healing that is required, there is a big blessing here, which is that if one is going from lack and emptiness in season 1 and they're going to wholeness in season 2, then that is unconditional confidence. So for me at the moment, I'm going to do a podcast on what's coming up for me, but the macro theme is real surrender and letting go. And that's what my whole void has been about. For me, it's, can I be okay without the success? Because with the success, trying to make more money, trying to look more successful, trying to be liked by more people, when that's piloting my life, I'm held so captive by those attachments. It's really an unenjoyable way to live. I'm attached to it, so it's painful to let go, but it's more painful to feel that I'm in that prison of attachment. And it's also completely spawned from insecurity. And so I'm not very confident at all in those states. However, this whole path where the universe withholds your attachments to teach you to love yourself, that self-love, which is really a big motivator for me, is so empowering. For me now, I back myself for who I am and where I am in my life. I know where I am is perfect. I really do. And one thing I want you to realize as you're being forced to let go of certain attachments is that as much of, in the scheme of the time of the universe, life is very short. But in the prioritization of what life's about, with fulfillment, life's actually pretty long. And so let's say, for example, the thing that you don't want to wait another second for, the partner, the husband, the body, letting go, like that weight. I just need to change my body. I just need that surgery on my face, or I just need to make that extra money, or I just need to break through in my business, or I just need to quit this job. Whatever that thing is outside of you that you're hoping is going to change, if it didn't change for 5 years, you've still got a ton of time to shift your reality. And I'm letting you know that it becomes a hell of a lot easier to succeed. For me, for example, it's so easy for me to get into relationships and meet women because I know that I'm sweet without it. So I'm not given this needy, attached vibe. And the universe works like that on all fronts. It's very easy for me to get clients because I don't go into a client call going, oh my gosh, this has to go through. I need to make the sale. No, I'm just looking for aligned people. And if it's not going to give me a more fulfilling experience, I'm not interested, because I'm not piloting my life through external validation and external attachments. I'm looking to have a more rich experience, a more wholesome way to approach life. And there is definitely a big part of me that desires service, but I'm mega patient now. And so that's the juice here. That's the gift here. You are exactly where you're meant to be. And what I really desire for you, and what the universe wants for you as well, is for you to know that you're perfect as you are. And the confidence you can feel in who you are is so powerful, and it's so beautiful, and it's such an empowering state to be in. It feels really nice because it's not, your self-worth is not riding on these everything to go well for you to feel solid in who you are. The solidity is the fact that you are the whole freaking universe. You are whole, perfect, and complete for who you are right now. And it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to know that and to feel that in your body. And I'm so lucky that I'm on this journey, finding deeper layers of this. Yeah. So just to give you a little sneak peek of what it looks like for me, my biggest attachment's been in big success and validation for that success. And I genuinely feel okay if it takes me 20, 30 years to cultivate greater service and embodiment. I'm cool. I've got so much time. That's how I feel. I don't feel like I'm in a rush. I feel like if I wanted to, I could take a whole year off business and that'd be fine. I got so much time. But what I feel is so important for me is I want to love myself unconditionally more and more. And I do already so much more. And that's such a rewarding feeling to have. And it's such a high priority for me. And I'm inviting you to claim that same light at the end of the tunnel, because it is unavoidable to experience a lot of pain in the void. That's part of it. And it's beautiful in itself. But to summarize and bring home this journey for you and this podcast, the void is a transition from identifying as a incomplete person to identifying and knowing yourself to be whole. And to be really accurate, knowing that you are the universe as an embodied feeling. The idea is a weird concept to grab if you're not ready at that point. So the best thing that you can do in this process is surrender and let go. Just let go and trust that if you let go, you'll get through it. One last story before I wrap this up. Towards the start of 2022, when I just moved back from Costa Rica to Melbourne, I did a San Pedro journey. Okay. Wachuma. It's a plant medicine. And it was a beautiful experience. There was some emotion that came up in there, and there was some healing around my dad, and it was beautiful. When I got home over the couple of weeks after, I was so stuck in short-term gratification and addiction, more than I'd been for years. I was eating chocolate bars and binge eating lots of chocolate bars and eating McDonald's and things that I felt so much shame around. And I was binge watching Vikings, the TV series too. And I wasn't doing much work, that's for damn sure. I was just eating and watching TV and then going back out to get food and then watching TV and catching up with some people here and there. But I was just feeling so much embarrassment and shame, and it was just so involuntary. And I was just confused. What is going on? Why am I doing this? I haven't done this for years. It was unprovoked. What is happening? I knew it was off the back end of the San Pedro journey. And I remember walking into like a supermarket and I was literally hiding. Well, I wasn't like bobbed down or anything, but I was hyper vigilant, just praying that I didn't bump into someone that I knew, because I was feeling so embarrassed that I was behaving this way. And what I realized not too long after that moment is that I don't love myself if I binge eat. I don't love myself if I'm not productive. I don't love myself if I'm doing these unhealthy things. And I realized that shame, that embarrassment, the universe was teaching me to love myself without those high standards of trying to get it all right, trying to be perfect, better than other people because I'm healthier than other people, blah, blah, blah. And so I literally said, all right, screw it. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it. I don't mind. It's all good. I'm allowed to binge eat. I'm a human being. And within a few hours, every single craving that I had went away. I was completely fine if it didn't, but every craving that I had went away. And it's funny how this works. When oftentimes, especially when we're on the spiritual path, the moment we let go is the moment that we let God. And the moment we let God, God's like, boom, you got the memo, here you go. And you get the thing that you wanted in the first place. And now you don't even need it. So can you let go into this void? Can you trust? Can you trust? Hopefully, I really hope that my courageous journey of letting go of the multi-million-dollar business and prioritizing living a wholesome life that's simple so that I can love myself unconditionally inspires you. You're going to be okay. Not only are you going to be okay, you're going to be completely transformed in a way where your nervous system is receptive to wholeness. And it's going to be more fulfilling. It's going to be way more deeply connected. You will be more sensitive. You will be more aware of what's true. And with that extra duty of care, with that extra awareness is going to come an extra layer of duty of care required, more responsibility in life. You're not running around reactive, accidentally doing things and whoops, I accidentally missed that. You're not going to miss as many things. So there's going to be a greater responsibility. But my gosh, are you going to feel confident in who you are? My gosh, are you going to feel a deeper sense of love and find your way to your true purpose? It's going to be beautiful and it's going to be completely fulfilling in those moments when you connect to your heart, which is going to happen more and more and more. But you have to let in the pain. You have to surrender. You have to let go. And I promise you it's going to be worth it. So if you related or resonated to what I was saying in this episode, let me know. Send me an email, ryan@ryanmagic.com, or reach out on Instagram @theryanmagic. I love you so much. I'm so celebrating you for being on this journey. And that's the end of this episode. I'll see you guys in the next one. Lots of love. Peace out.